Hey there guys, it's Zologe here, and today we're going to be doing a top 20 countdown of my favorite decks of all time. Now this is an updated list. I'm going to be updating this every single year at New Year's because there's been a bunch of different decks entering the game or returning into the game, to which point they're playable again. And some of these decks are all-time classics, some of them are really new ones, or some of them are just flat-out rogue that no one else plays, basically. So I hope you guys enjoy this little list, and if you don't agree with me, that's completely fine. We're all human. So if you don't agree with me or whatever, you can post a top 10 list of your own down in the comment section, because I would love to see that. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoy this video, and yeah. So entering this list, we have Gustos. Now, this is a deck that I really didn't expect to be this much fun to play, that it would land in my top 20 list. Sure, it's still on the very bottom of the list, but it's still a very fun deck to play regardless. It's very trolly, since you're going to be OTKing your opponent by smacking weak monsters into them, by making them taking all the damage. And I just find it hilarious that you can just slam birds into your opponent, watching them slowly die, or even just OTKing them outright if you have threes. Yeah, number 20, Gusto. So slowly creeping over Gustos, we have Gem Knights. Now, I always loved the fusion mechanic. It's one of the ones I love the most about the game, and Gem Knights was like the deck that brought the mechanic back before Shaddolls entered the game. They were like the definitive fusion deck aside from Heroes, and I just love this deck, okay? It OTKs, and it allows you to just like recycle your fusion spell, and the new support they got is also pretty nifty. And seriously, Diamond, do I need to say more? He's awesome. So, the concept of banishing one light and one dark monster from your grave to special summon something has been a thing ever since Invasion of Chaos, I do believe. And with the introduction of the Chaos theme later on in the 5Ds to Zizal era, we've got the Chaos Dragon deck, and I love Chaos Dragons. In fact, the whole concept of Chaos in general is something which I really, really like. And it's one of the very few structure decks that I actually bought and got pretty familiar with. So it's not something that I've been playing competitively, and it's not viable at all anymore, besides maybe BLS. He's like the best friggin' Chaos monster in the game, aside from Chaos Emperor Dragon, which isn't legal. So I just love this deck in general. It has searchability, it has powerful plays, it runs a really cool engine, and it's very adaptive, as well as you can build it in however ways you want. And it's a really cool thing. I love it. So at number 18, we have Chaos Dragon. Rolling in at number 17 on this list is the Mali Monarchs. This is one of the first deck profiles I did on YouTube, and the deck still holds up because of what it can do. I mean, it spams rank 6s all over the board. It's not a super competitive deck, but it's a deck that I built from scratch. I didn't even know that there was something like this to begin with when I did it, so I was like, hey, Mali is now at 3. Let's make something of it. And the first thing I thought, instead of everyone else going like, hey, let's make zombies again, I was like, okay, let's go make some kind of Monarch rank 6 deck. And the deck is really cool. I personally really enjoy what you can do in this deck. It's so fast, it's not even funny. You can like pump out 2-3 rank 6s in one go, and just the fact that the deck has access to Soul Charge now makes things so much better. Anyway, number 17, Mali Monarchs. Number 16, we have the friggin' rank 5 spam. This was a deck that I also, very similarly to Mali Monarchs, I just made my own little twist on this. It's kind of fast, but you don't really have much cards in your hand after you've gotten your plays. This was before, you know, the pendulum mechanic was even a thing. So what you were doing was basically using cards like the Overlay Booster, Cyber Dragon, and the Galaxy Soldier to make rank 5s, like Constellar Pleiades, Tiraz, the Keeper of Genesis, Cyber Dragon, the Cyber Dragon Nova, and etc., etc. So the deck was actually very powerful in what place it could make. One of the best ones was, of course, the Volcasaurus into Gaia Dragon play. That was one of the best plays the deck had. So it's a really fast-paced deck, and I hope you guys enjoy playing with it. I had it back in the day, so you could check out the deck profile. I'll probably annotate it right on screen right now. If it's a deck that I profiled, it's probably going to be on screen in annotation, which you can click, and it'll go straight to the profile. Anyway, number 16, rank 5 spam. Number 15 belongs to the Volcanics. Now, this is a deck that I have been playing for quite some time. I played it, like, back when I first got into Yu-Gi-Oh! Again, after, high school and everything. I got back into Yu-Gi-Oh! At that time, and I started playing, Volcanics. And it was just a deck that I just kind of picked up because I liked it from the show. So I was like, okay, well, this deck is kind of neat, and with the new support that it just got a while back, which is the magazine, it's going to get it in Secrets of Eternity. It's a really, really cool card. I really like just what kind of shenanigans you can pull with it, like dropping the scatter shot to blow up your opponent's entire board, using the shell to get continuous draw power, etc., etc. Or just dumping cards for things like Blaster is just nice. I love it. So number 15, Volcanics. Now for number 14. This is going to surprise a lot of you, but it is the Allies of Justice. I really like the dual terminal archetypes in general, and this is one of the absolute best, in my opinion. Not necessarily best in like playstyle, but what they can do and what lore they have. Like, Hataster is a pretty damn solid card, and it's been like that for quite some time, at least until like last format and this format, because there's a lot of prevalent dark decks. But Allies of Justice, I just like what they do and how centralized and how quirky the deck really is, as it's like strictly anti-light. If you play something that's playing light monsters, you're gonna basically have a bad time against this, but it sucks against anything else. So it's very, very specific in what it does. However, I still like the artwork, and it's one of the first machine decks I ever played. So yeah, I just love the archetype as a whole. Number 14, Allies of Justice. Teledad is at number 13, people. Anyway, so what makes this deck so interesting and why it's on my list at all is because of what it managed to do. It's a tier 0 deck that managed to make a name out of itself by a newly introduced mechanic, the Synchro Summon. And it was like in the same set that Teledad was like just a super duper good thing. And it was a really powerful deck at the time. The only deck that really could beat it at the time was the Frog FTK, which, which won like 90% of the time against Teledad. But if Teledad really got it off, and just they could OTK so easily. And I just like how it took a newly introduced mechanic, like this the first booster set into the new era, and Teledad just made it a tier 0 deck out of it. I just love it. So cards like Stardust Dragon and Thought Ruler Archfiend were the cornerstones of the synchro portion of the deck, and I just love it. Teledad at number 13, people. At number 12, we have zombies, specifically the Super Poly zombies. I love this deck, alright. It's a deck that you can't really play anymore, but still, I love it nonetheless. Going into Beals and Dragon Necro was just so much fun to use, especially when Zombie World was on board and you used your opponent's monsters for the Dragon Necro. That was basically an instant win at that point, if they didn't have an out to Dragon Necro and a Beals. That was just game right there, and I just love love what the deck can do, and it really just screws over many decks with the zombie world, like seriously, back in its, I guess, prime. So I encourage you to pick this deck up. It's actually pretty cheap, and if you're not playing anything like super competitive, you can play this against your friends and just have a grand old time, okay? Just have a fun time playing this, because it's not going to be very playable after the 1st of January, so yeah. Alright, so at number 11, we have Dragoonity. Now, Dragon Ravine was hit, and the deck isn't playable anymore. But back in the day when you still had Dragon's Ravine, this deck was really fun to play. Sure, they have the Dragoonity Spear Divinity, or whatever the crap it's called, I don't know, but it's not a replacement for the field spell. But it's still a good cornerstone for what they can do now. They have to rely on this instead of, the field spell, but the field spell is just all around much better. So in case you don't know what the deck does, it basically just brings out Vajrayana, goes into Stardust, and flips a Assault mode activate, and you go into Stardust Dragon Assault mode, and that is basically the deck's win condition. You can do a lot more if you're playing things like Mistletian and all those other ones. You need to be really adaptive when you play this deck. So yeah, and that's why I like it so much. You need to adapt your strategy and to compensate what's on field, rather than just going for a win condition immediately. Unless you go first. If you go first, go for that Stardust Dragon Assault mode. It's going to win you the game. So yeah, go play this deck with your friends or whatever. I don't actually have a deck profile on this deck yet, but it's probably going to come out eventually if you guys want it enough. Anyway, at number 11, we have Dragoonity. So this slot hasn't changed since last list. This is still number 10, which is the Agents. Did this really surprise you if you've watched the last one? I mean, have you played Agents? If you have, you probably know where I'm coming from. It's a deck that you can play in so many different ways. You can play Chaos variants, you can play TGs in it, and it's just a fun deck to play in general. I mean, heck, I've even seen people run Star Seraphs in them, and it works. So it's just a fun deck to play, and I love it. And with Honest at 2 now after January, how can you not like playing this deck anymore? Because how can you not like it? Because it's a light deck, and you just drop Honest on everything, and it's just Now, I'm not going to sit here and just make the top 10 part of this list a complete rehash, because it isn't. At number 9, we have Vanilla Pendulum. It's a deck that I've been profiling a while back, like a couple of weeks ago, I think, as of recording this, and the deck is a lot of fun still, and with Dragoons of Draconia coming out in Secrets of Eternity, this deck is going to be even more fun to play. I mean, you can search this thing out with Tenki, and you search everything else out with it. So it's a really good card. And the deck is actually a lot of fun too. Like, you can go all out and still have 6 cards in your hand afterwards, just because of the sheer fact that you have Heart of the Underdog in your deck. Sure, you need to be a little bit lucky if you run other support as well, but the deck just draws so much if you have Heart of the Underdog. It's not even funny. So the number 8th slot goes to Denko Dolls. Yes, this is a deck that I am actually playing competitively. I love this deck to such a big extent that it actually landed on here. One of the very few competitive decks that I really, really enjoy playing. Now, I'm not going to go ahead and say that I don't like meta decks, because I do. Just take a look at my Girgia deck and you'll see. Because I actually like playing Girgias back when they were good. But right now, Denko Dolls and just Shadolls in general is something that I really, really like. Because it's supposed to be originally a stun deck that revolves around just ridding your opponent of special summoning and taking advantage of their special summon monsters using things like Construct, Winda, and Grista to keep your opponent away from very key plays. This deck, the Denko Dolls, they kind of are supposed to be there just to OTK your opponent using things like the L Fusion and regular Shadow Fusion to go for big, big plays, and then going eventually for the BLS and just dish out all that damage. And that's why I like them so much, is because of how much they changed since new challengers, since L Fusion just changed their entire playstyle. Now they can go and make much more aggressive plays, and it's just a fancy time. So if you haven't played Shaddolls yet, try them out with L Fusion. It's a blast. So here's another entry which has not changed since last list, and that is Archfiends. They're still the same general deck that just rolls on stunning your opponent, bringing out Emperor, and just keep on popping your opponent's monster and swinging with him, using things like Sinister Shiro to keep your monsters protected, as well as giving you that normal summon without the penalty. And it's just a nice deck. I love it so much. You can go for Beals and things like that too. And if you didn't know, I used to play this back in like April, May last year because I just enjoyed playing it that much. And I was on the Dueling Network forums discussing a lot of things with some people there, and it was just generally a fun time, hence why this deck lands on the spot. It's a little more refined than last time, I know, but I actually have a more refined reason for it now, which is kind of nice to see them have something more personal to them this time. And here we have yet another entry, which is still the same as it was last time. This is Mermails, and since they just got back Gundy, I have grown in love with this deck, just like with all the other decks on this list, really. And Gundy just helps out the deck a lot. I'm just really happy it came back. It's one of the decks that I just love to play against and love to play with. So it's like the weirdest thing that I both like facing it and like dueling with it. It's one of the very few decks that have this. Another deck which has this same thing to it, at least in my opinion, comes down later down the list. Now, this is one of my favorite matchups, as I mentioned, just because of how combo-oriented they are and how they work together. So you have to like really outmaneuver your opponent, or just because they have all their answers, and you just need to have the answers to the answers, and it's just a whole lot of fun to fight against or play with because of all the options you have. And this is one of the decks also which is really good at teaching you Yu-Gi-Oh!, courtesy to the RJB0, who mentioned just how easy it is to notice when you did something wrong, and it's also very easy to see how much resources you need to like accumulate and when to make a play or not. It's a great meta deck to start playing, just to get used to the whole competitive nature of things, and it's going to make you a lot better at the game in general, hence why it's this high on the list. And the number 5 slot is the same as last time. Yes, it is Ghost Trick Monarchs, and there's a good reason for it. They have Mega Caius. Okay, let me just say that again. They have Mega Caius, easy access to him, and they also have really nice access to all of the Monarch support without being hurt by their clauses, just because of their easy access to instant tribute fodder, which is also dark, by the way. That's really important. And they can play Return of the Monarchs. Escalation is amazing in the deck because, you know, you summon everything during your opponent's turn and they just tribute it off a regular Caius. Or if you feel really sneaky, you can go for Stormforth and tribute one of your opponent's monsters together with one of your own to go for a nasty Mega Caius to get rid of some amazing things for your opponent. It's just going to hurt them really, really bad. So this is a deck that I just absolutely enjoy playing. So if you're into Monarchs in any way, shape, or form, I definitely recommend you playing this particular variant because it's the most consistent and it is one of the better ways to play Mega Caius. The only thing I can think of which is probably better is Burning Abyss, but right now it just doesn't seem like it's worth it considering they can just handle they can just go on their own pretty damn well. So I have a deck profile on this particular deck on YouTube, so if you want to check it out, there's a link in the description as well as a annotation on screen right now. If you're mobile, just click the link, and yeah. Just note that this is not the one with Mega Caius in it, though. I'm going to do an update on it if you really want it. I can give you the updated deck profile eventually. It's probably going to be somewhere in the middle of January, maybe early February before I reach that. But yeah, so On to the next number. The number 4 slot on this list goes to the Voltic Gate. Yes, it's the same as last year, but now we have masked heroes coming in, and I can't wait to play this deck into TCG, because Dark Law is amazing, Koga is amazing, Enki is okay, and Kamikaze is pretty good too, but we don't have any good targets to go into the guy. So, I mean, the deck is really nice. You just use your field spell to go into regular fusions, then use Mask Change to go into the masked heroes, blowing up back row, blowing up monsters, and you know, smack, smack, smack game. It's very similar in playstyle to the Shaddoll OTK, which is just using L fusion over and over and over again, and just going into big fusions, slamming your opponent in the face multiple times per battle phase with what is essentially the same monster, which is, you know, pretty awesome. There's a good reason why I like this deck more so than Shaddoll's, though, and that's because, you know, heroes have been a big part of our childhoods. If you've been playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Since the GX era, this is a deck that has stuck with you for a long time, and just see them getting new ways to fuse and just new ways to play in general is just a nice thing to see. And the field spell, the Fusion Gate, is just as viable as it is ever because of Shining. Shining is just amazing in the gate builds. So yeah, on to the next entry, guys. The number 3 slot belongs to Plant Synchro. Yes, I haven't been able to play this deck because of things like Glow Up Bulb and Reborn Tengu going back to 2 and you know, things like that. But now, since they've gone back to 3 and we have access to Glow Up Bulb, we can potentially be playing this deck again, and it's a really cool deck. I just like how everything works together, and it just synchros upon synchros upon synchros, and the plays you can do can just extend forever as long as you have the cards in your hand. You can build a board of 4 to 5 synchros in one turn if you have the right cards and a Hyper Librarian on field, which is, you know, it just changes so much. And I love this deck. I haven't been playing it for a very long time, but it's already managed to sneak its way up to number 3, and I can see why people love it so much too. Heck, I'm one of them. Now, the entry on the number 2 slot is here just purely for you guys. Like, if it wasn't for you, this deck wouldn't be here, and I wouldn't be here sitting right now talking about this entire list in the first place, because now I'm actually taking Yu-Gi Tubing very seriously. And it just happened one day when I was looking through my videos, and I saw my deck profile for the, you know, the Raccoon Synchro, the first one I made. And I saw that it almost had 1,000 views. And I'm sitting like, wow. And I just wanted to say thank you guys for that. Like, seriously, from the bottom of my heart, I didn't expect any of my videos to reach 1,000 views this quickly, so to speak, from a guy that just has 46 subs. I really just want to say thank you. And I really just can't say any more than that. I really wish I could just go out and just meet every single one of my subscribers, just because of how much support they show. Not just necessarily by comments or anything like that, because I don't get any comments, sadly. But just the fact that when I see someone subscribing that has subscribed to me, I'm sitting like, oh, my content is appealing to this guy. It's just, I'm not expecting too much out of my channel, but now this deck has just personified myself on YouTube. And I did not necessarily want the Raccoon Synchro to be the deck. I wanted it to be Fire Kings, if anything, because it's my favorite deck. Fire Kings, as you all know, is my favorite deck. I just love the card destruction effects. The Garunix loop is just so much fun to mess around with. You get to draw many cards. It's not necessarily the most wombo combo deck in the world, but I just love the concept of destruction using fire monsters. And just Garunix is such a cool card. And yeah. So thank you guys so very, very much for watching. And if you enjoyed it, please consider subscribing, and have a happy new year, people. I'll see you probably next week, actually, where we're going to be covering a new deck, which is Nekors. So I hope you guys are looking forward to that, and I'll see you guys later. Then, whatever. I'm out already.